There's a couple things in this world that if I took away from you, you wouldn't survive very long. One of them is oxygen, and the other one is water.
Earth, the only known place in the universe capable of sustaining life. Water is the life source of all living beings on our planet, consisting of 70% of the Earth's surface. It's the vascular system that makes all life possible, the veins of Mother Earth herself. At least 60% of the adult body is made of it, and every living cell in the body needs it to keep functioning. A healthy human being can survive 3 weeks without food, but will perish after only 3 days without water. So why is this vital resource not protected, whenever it's the one resource that connects us all?
The 1930s and 1940s, when the mills were going, and there was no effort to protect water. The mills dumped all of their waste into the rivers. I'm working with a little creek, well, they call it Nasty Creek now, but it was located next to an old mill, and they ran all of their sanitary waste into that little creek. They used the creeks and rivers and streams as their open sewers.
One of the oldest waste disposal techniques in the Piedmont is called find a low place and fill it up. So there's probably been a tradition in this area of throwing stuff into rivers and streams for 100 years. The old idea was if you throw it in the stream just takes it away, you don't have to worry about it. So we're gonna really have to do some education here in the Piedmont just to get people to stop throwing trash anywhere, but in particular, when they find a stream crossing, it's an easy way to throw an old television off. And I think people just looked at the streams the same way. It was an easy way to get rid of a problem. And so just went off the bridge into the river.
Human beings are the only species capable of innovation and creation, industrialization and subjugation. But at what expense? The same resource that nourishes and provides for us has become a dumping ground for waste.
I think the first thing people need to understand about watersheds and water is that everything that they put on the ground or in the water is going to go someplace. Let's just take Spartanburg County. So the water that falls in Spartanburg County, that water is going to go down into a little tiny creek called Pollywood. Pollywood's going to go into Lawson's Fork. Lawson's Fork flows down the east side of Spartanburg down to Glendale, and it'll eventually end up in the Pacolet River. And from the Pacolet River, that same water is going to go down, join with the Broad River down on its way to Columbia. In Columbia, it's going to join several other rivers to make what is known as the Congaree River. The Congaree River is going to go down to the Santee Cooper Lakes. From the Santee Cooper Lakes, we're going to take it down to Charleston, and it's going to get dumped in Charleston Harbor. And from Charleston Harbor, it goes out into the Atlantic Ocean. You understand that the ocean is a vast pool of water because everybody on this planet dumps all their waste into the ocean. Ultimately, the ocean is going to reach a point where it can no longer assimilate that waste or those pollutants. And some things decompose very quickly, and some things will never decompose. For example, plastics. When we dump plastics, it'll eventually get into a creek somewhere, and eventually going to end up in the river, down in the lakes, on its way to Charleston, and out in the ocean. Now, when it gets out in the ocean, it's not going to break down. And so eventually it's going to get caught up in something, and they always find lots of animals that have gotten tied up in plastic netting. Some we save, some we can't.
In an age when man has forgotten his origins and is blind even to his most essential needs for survival, water has become the victim of his indifference.
All the rivers, except for a few in the upstate, are impaired or with primarily fecal coliform. It comes from the same sources as everywhere. Old septic tanks, animal feces, sometimes human waste. And we have a really big issue here because This place is used as a park by the community, and during the summer there'll be 15 or 20 people sitting on these rocks, swimming in the water, and there's actually a sign here where DHEC says that it's not safe for swimming. We don't think it's unsafe most of the time to swim here or to wade here or to walk in the water, but when the water's rising, a lot of pollution sweeps into the river from off the streets and off the land, and so we would imagine at those times that the bacteriological levels are high here.
You name it, I pulled it out of a creek. Right now, most of the water in the creeks and the rivers is water that we technically would not let you swim in, and if you can't swim in it, you definitely can't drink it.
And I know there are people who fish here. As far as whether I would eat them, I'm not sure that I would eat the fish.
What can we do to protect this vital resource? Is this the world we want to leave for our children?
Just keeping trash out. A lot of people just, take the batteries out of their flashlights and throw them out the window of their car. Well, those are eventually going to go into the lake. Maybe take a couple of years, but they're going to decay. And all that's in there is going to be released into the water. And you say, oh, that's only one battery. Yeah, but if every person did that, think of how many batteries are going to go into the water. Things like fertilizers, try to keep fertilizers out. The nitrogen, phosphorus, which are the primary things in fertilizer, are great things to feed algae, which feed the bacteria and promote green lakes, and eventually will kill out the fish. Just to remind people, if you throw stuff down the storm drain, that goes into a creek or into a river or into the lake. But if you take storm water that's really highly polluted with oil from the streets, fertilizers, all these kinds of chemicals, then that goes in the creek. That creek then goes into a bigger creek. And so we start polluting the whole thing all the way down. Everything we do in the upstate has an impact on the lower part of the state. Ultimately, somewhere or another is going to end up back in the Atlantic Ocean.
It is our responsibility to teach our children the effects that we have on water. Most importantly, understanding the value and magnificence of this fundamental element.
I live just upstream, and about 7 years ago I got the idea of, well, if I've got a river outside my house, right in the backyard, why don't I get in a boat and paddle it all the way to the ocean? And so I got a couple of friends together, and we actually set up campsites, 11 days worth of campsites along the way. We knew where we were going to paddle each night, and we'd paddle through the day, and we'd camp on islands or on beaches. And it took us 11 days to paddle from here to the Atlantic Ocean. I would say that the primary piece of advice that I have is to get to know your rivers. That's the reason that I paddled from Spartanburg to the coast. I wanted to say in my lifetime, I've paddled from my backyard all the way to the ocean, and I see what the conditions are all the way, and I see what the issues are between here and the coast. And so my advice would be, go out, find your nearest stream, and walk it, visit it on a daily basis, learn about it, learn about its issues, and learn about the problems and the beauties that are associated with it. We can hear the water in the background, we can see its beauty, and we can sense this river, and we can get to know it just in a little bit of contact.
I grew up in the Colorado Rockies, and the water was clean enough that you could actually take a cup, drink water right out of the stream. I wouldn't do that right now, almost any place. The goal is to make the water in the upstate swimmable and fishable. What little bit we do is a tiny little bit in comparison to the whole world. If everybody did their part, we wouldn't have a problem.
We had this amazing ceremony here. We had Buddhist monks, Tibetan Buddhist monks, and they made a big mandala in the Chapman Center, and they needed to put the mandala made out of sand into a river when they finished. And so they brought all the sand out here, and they walked with these big horns and their orange headdresses right down to here. And then they threw the sand in the river, and they threw flowers in right after it. And when we were standing here, there were 100 of us watching this, and we were standing here, we were thinking about how that sand is going to make its way to the rivers to the Atlantic Ocean someday. Not in our lifetimes, but in somebody's lifetime, that sand will be in the Atlantic Ocean. And so anything we put into these rivers is going to sooner or later make its way to the ocean. And we need to be aware of that we are connected to the rivers, by the rivers, to the ocean, which is 200 miles away.
Water. It connects us all.